I must have touched this thing. And this gives off quite a bit more electricity than just touching the wires does. Hey folks, I'm Sean the Modern Yeoman, and we've got some work to do today. You might remember a few episodes ago when I deemed these greens beds essentially a failed experiment. Now there's two reasons why I did that. Number one, they don't get enough sun. The wall behind me here blocks the sun off for half the day. Initially we thought that would be a good thing because these are greens. We were afraid that they'd bolt out too early, but it turns out that they needed more sun than they're actually getting. The second reason why this is a failure, moisture pulls up way too easily in this area and it doesn't drain well. So between non-draining soil and not enough sun, these greens beds need to be moved. So what we decided we're going to do is we're going to move these three greens beds right here. We're going to create a row. We're going to butt them up one against the other. I think it'll be enough room. And we're going to extend the kitchen garden. Now, as you can see here, after a bit of a rough start, our kitchen garden is doing really good. The tomatoes are out of control. The peppers are healthy. The zucchinis, the potatoes, everything seems to be doing well. So we figured maybe we move the greens over here, try them out in a more sunny location, and hopefully, maybe we'll be able to get in a decent fall harvest here in the next few months. Now, before we get everything moved over, there's a lot of work I need to do. Number one, I need to reconfigure this fence to make sure that it will accommodate that new row of greens beds. I'm thinking maybe 6 or 7 feet, maybe 8 feet. I'll do the measuring on that today. So I need to move the fence, make sure that it'll accommodate that new row. And second, I need to lay down some silage tarp to nuke this grass and get the ground here ready for a new row of beds. I realize that there's going to be grass that grows up in between the lanes, and we've talked about having living lanes in between the raised beds. I'm fine with that, but I still do want to get the ground beneath those beds ready. So after I get the grass killed with the silage tarp, I'm probably going to be digging that area up with a broad fork or even using a rototiller just to break up that hard pan clay. Anyways, it's really, really hot out here, so I need to prep myself to work out here in the sun. So let's go get changed and let's get some water. So the first order of business is reconfiguring the fence, and this actually might be the trickiest portion of this entire task. If I want to account for 3 foot lanes on either side of this new garden bed row, the row itself, these beds are going to be 4 feet wide. That's going to be 10 feet of extra space that I need to account for. Now, I don't know if I have 10 feet of space in this fence, so I'm going to get to measuring, and fingers crossed that I'll be able to actually have enough space. So I just realized my first mistake in those amateur calculations. The initial 3 feet lane that I was figuring I'd need to include is already here. It's right here. I've already got that 3 feet bought in, so I only need 7 feet, which seems a lot more doable in terms of the spacing of the fence. Let's move these logs and see if I'm correct. So as you can see, I have more than enough room, which is very encouraging. In fact, I'm gonna have to get creative in how I finish formatting this space. I might make a little lobby space where I can bring the cart in and put the gate there. Just give myself a little bit of extra room, but regardless, I'll have more than enough room for this additional row of garden beds. All right, so the fence area is looking good. I still need to put the corner posts in to get rid of the sag that you see here on the fence, but all in all, the measurements work out just fine, so we're good on space. Thankfully, the sun has disappeared behind a very thick layer of clouds, but it looks like it might rain soon. So I'm gonna get out of this ridiculous getup into something a little more cool and less sun blocking, and see if I can't mow this grass down and get ready for the silage tarp to be put down. Right, at this point I just need to lay out the silage tarp. Thankfully I only need to lay out a width of 4 feet of silage tarp. The other 3 feet, I don't need to cover that up and kill that grass because we've opted to use living lanes. In other words, just keep it as grass. I'm just going to nuke the grass that's going to be where the raised beds are. Sun's back. Figures. Okay, so the silage tarp is in place. Just imagine one long raised bed here. I'm gonna probably keep this here maybe till the end of August, so 2 months of summer sun. I think that ought to do the trick in nuking any grass that's underneath it. It's just over 4 feet wide. It's actually 4 and 3 or 4 inches, which is good because I want there to be a little overlap because the edges won't get all of the grass when it's dying. So I'm gonna set the fence up in its new format and just let this thing sit. And hopefully here in the next few weeks, I'll be able to dig up the beds, the greens beds, and move those frames over here. Like I said, one long raised bed frame here at the end of the garden. Okay, so the The thing is off now. I know that was probably a little hilarious to watch, but I think what happened was while this was laying down over there on the raised bed, something nudged this and turned it off. So it was just floating there, ungrounded, hanging out, giving off a charge. And so I didn't realize that when I picked it up and felt a shock as I was just carrying this thing around. I felt like a light shock. And then when I turned it over, I must have touched this thing. Again, it's off, so I'm okay touching it. And this gives off quite a bit more electricity than just touching the wires does. When you touch the wires, it'll give you a little jolt, but it does not give you a shake jolt like touching this thing does. So a little bit of a warning if you're working with Premier One fencing. Make sure that this thing is off, even if you set it off to the side and you think it might be off, and maybe it was off when you put it down. It could very well accidentally get turned on. So make sure that it's off before you pick the thing up, and make doubly sure not to touch this thing, because that'll kick out some voltage and hit you pretty hard like it did me. Well, all's well that ends well, I suppose. This thing got done. I'm gonna let that sit here for 2 months or so and hopefully get some greens going in the fall. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I'm not sure if it's gonna rain. Sky just can't seem to make up its mind, so I'm gonna clean up, head inside, and until next time, remember, as always, slowly, slowly.